Yeah,
This
we'll call the
conference will
meeting to
now be
order, John.
recorded.
Thank you. A roll call. I'll start with me, Charles Funk.
Angie DeSanto.
Jesse Burnham.
Judy Austin.
And Catherine is also here, so that's good. Ex officiato. Okay, thank you. I don't think we have any alternates, so there's nobody to seat. Communications, any communications I have are either in public comments, which it looks like I don't need to deal with, or part of our new business discussion. So I don't have any communications. Paul, I have two opportunities for public comments. I don't know if you want to do your public comments now or after a few of our new business items.
It really did that. I know I got it to you late. Get out to board members or just to you, Chuck?
I just got it to me, Paul. I haven't sent it out to the others, so they haven't read it yet. My hope was actually to have you read it or express yourself to the board. I will send it out to everybody. I just hadn't done it yet.
Okay, I just didn't want to repeat it if they had already read it. So, well, just in case, because I am working the night shift tonight. So,
Okay.
I'll just summarize what I wrote, and then the board can read it at their leisure. But basically, I had 2 points, or 3. The first one was I was concerned when the board discussed inflating, if you will, artificially inflating this year's budget to make up or try to pad for next year. However, looking at the info that you're going to talk about tonight, there actually seems like there's a way the town can do that safely and earmark those funds, which I think is really that's a good idea. I was worried about, for instance, adding to somebody's budget and then having that money be used inappropriately, so to speak.
Yep.
The second thing was, John Kopek had mentioned it too, that the Board of Education, we always seem to hear the same story all the time, every year, over and over again. And that worries me because they seem to have, at the end of the year, enough funds to put aside into their 1% fund, as we call it. And I'm not saying that it's possible to narrow it down to the last dime. It just seems that we hear the same story, and that doesn't sit well with me personally. And then finally, the last thing was I had pointed out that there were 4 or 5 departments that had asked for some substantial increases, as I would call it, in what I would call a very, very bad time to do that. And those increases actually were over and above what some departments who had been working throughout this whole thing had requested. And I just thought, as a taxpayer, looking at those line items, if I had the opportunity to ask those departments directly, I would ask why they need those funds and why this year. So that was kind of my point with that. I wasn't trying to throw anybody under the bus or point anybody out. It just, at this time, with so much going on with people and so many people out of work or possibly out of work, I know things are starting to open back up, but at the same time, that raises some issues for some people health-wise who have concerns, et cetera. So I just think it's a bad time to be adding burden to people. So that was my point. And then I'm really interested to see what happens tonight with those 2 conversations on MBR and I think King and King called it, the tuition stabilization. So thanks, Chuck, and thank you to the board.
Okay. Thanks, Paul. And to the board members, I will get you. I will get Paul's written letter out to all of you. He has a little more detail in his letter that I think we should be aware of. So again, thanks, Paul. Is there anybody else from the public?
Chuck?
Yeah, Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to address just from this particular agenda item as a member of the public. And I guess there are several things that Paul mentioned that I agree with, but I wanted to make a point that, and I know that the light seems at the end of the tunnel on the situation with COVID and everything, and we certainly are all praying that that's going to be the case. But in view of the fact that most of a large number of our residents in town are suffering from what's happened and transpired over the past year, whether it's concerns or layoffs, job losses, um, educational needs, or trying to meet it, and hardship added on to the potential of the illness that many of our families have experienced. If there's ever a year that I really think we should all put our best step forward, not to pass on a tax increase, and to, in fact, if we could reduce the mill rate in any way, that I would hope that be given a legitimate look. I'm really concerned, and I know it's a bit difficult for us to be optimistic in this time, and I'm trying to be as optimistic as I can be on the upcoming year. But I keep going back to it. There's too many unknowns right now. And I mean, primarily that's my point I wanted to make to your board. Um, I know with the new stimulus money that we're talking about and everything else, and I know that we're not up at the bat this year at E.O. Smith on a budget, and some of the reductions we've had there makes it look a little brighter for us than we've seen in past years. But this is going to be our only year in several years that we aren't going to be in that situation at E.O. Smith. We've got a couple of major building projects and bonding issues coming up within the next couple of years. And if in fact some of this stimulus does come our way, which it looks like it's going to, my suggestion would be we more look to balance off our budget and not pass off any increases, and that we look to let those funds benefit our fund balance as much as possible, and perhaps increase our capital improvement fund, which we all know who's been sitting in on these meetings and everything have been taking a hit and going in a downward direction, with the exception of a small amount this year. But I would hope that any money that we could designate from those funds, or as much of those monies from the stimulus funds, be aimed in that direction instead of increasing any line items. I know that there are some line items in our proposed budget that I would hope, and I look forward to your recommendations on it. I may have to leave the meeting a little early today, so that's why I'm doing my spiel right now. But I'm going to stay on as long as I can. And again, thank you all for your efforts.
Thanks, Bill. Is there anyone else that would like to speak from the public? Thank you both for your participation. The next agenda item: approved minutes of the regular meeting Thursday, March 4th, 2021. I need a motion to approve these minutes in a second, and then we can do any corrections that may be recommended.
Jesse
Also
Burnham.
moved.
Okay, so Jesse, you're first, and Angie, are you a second?
Sure.
I hope everybody got a second to read these. Are there any corrections that anybody noticed or wants to bring up? I read through it with about 7/8 of an eye, and I didn't see anything. So I guess since there's no corrections being noted, All in favor of accepting the motion to approve these minutes?
Aye.
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 Oppose? Abstain? Motion passes. Thank you. New business. Selectmen's update with information on the CARES Act funding impact for Ashford. Catherine, thank you for joining us, and you're up.
So I did send, Chuck, I know I sent you the amounts that we're looking at.
Yep.
I don't know if that was shared with the other board members. If not, I'll put them up on screen.
That would be great if you could put them up on the screen. I apologize to board members. I've been, there's no excuse, but it's been very busy. So I did not get those two things out to you. So anyway, I apologize. Go ahead, Catherine.
Okay, bear with me just a second here. Who's managing our meeting tonight?
John?
John, can you make it so I can share?
Sure, just a moment.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right, you should be able to present now, Catherine.
Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
I can't.
Not yet.
Okay, bear with me just a second. This is always challenging. Share. It doesn't let me hit the share button. You sure that I'm allowed to?
You are listed as the presenter right now, so your share button should be activated. At the bottom
Okay,
middle of your screen.
now it is. All right, there we go. Can you see the screen?
Not yet.
Yep,
There it is.
I
There
can.
it is.
Because it says for me to, if I want to, I can stop sharing. So you should be able to see it now.
Yep,
What you
we
should
see it.
see is a excerpt from spreadsheet.
It's on my screen.
Okay, and I've tried to make it big, so I hope you can all read it. All right, so these are the amounts that I have heard we are getting. I reached out to Tammy Nuccio, our rep, to find out when these are going to be finalized, when they're going to be received, when we'll receive them, and if there are any restrictions on how we use the monies. Clearly, the ones that are for the school are education-based. That's the ESSER 2 and the education one that you see under the rescue plan as well. So I don't have the answers back from her yet. I do anticipate that she'll find out for me. She's been very good about that. I don't know if anybody else has heard. Cheryl, I know you and I talked yesterday. And yeah, and the only thing that I heard in passing was that the monies cannot be used. For example, our non-education monies cannot be used to offset taxes. But I don't know if that's true. And I would hope that we wouldn't be using it in that fashion. I would hope that, as Bill suggested, that we might be beefing up our
Capital
non-recurring
non-recurring.
CNR. Okay, and for any other kinds of things. And Cheryl, I don't think that we've heard anything about getting any more COVID funding, correct?
Correct.
So that's all I can tell you about this right now, except that these are some pretty sizable amounts. And
Yeah,
definitely.
the only question Angie, are you able to see the screen from your computer?
Yes, I can.
Okay, very good. So yes, I agree, Catherine. I think these are pretty sizable, and our hope was obviously to have a little more information on what these things can be used for, but that we can anticipate them is, that's great news. And we'll look forward to figuring out what we actually can utilize that funding for.
As soon as I know, you'll know.
Yep.
I did want to point out too that this is 2 years. not just one on this.
Right. Yeah, no, that's great. And it'll be interesting to see how the school's able to utilize that funding.
All right. And as far as some more for my report to you, I am concerned. Apparently, the schools for the cybersecurity insurance that will expire at the end of June, and that we were trying to get a cybersecurity policy, and certainly at a reasonable rate. We have an issue, and the issue pertains to, I believe, how the school's accesses are set up. And Cheryl, maybe you could elaborate a little bit on that.
Sure. The only feedback we've received so far is that the main problem is that they don't have multi-factor authentication. So they don't have the basic security level on any of their emails. So all of their computers and emails can be accessed with just a password. The multi-factor authentication would make it so that you would use your password and have a code texted to you, or a code called into a phone number that is designated. So because they don't even have that basic security measure, many other questions were asked. So they're digging even deeper, and some companies have actually just said pass. We're not even, we don't want any part of that. So you're going to have to travel on. So we do have Dan Anderson from HD Seeger looking into some different policies. We went back and forth with some emails today with more information. So we are still looking into it. There is also the option that we could have a policy on our own without the school. But then they are still the wild card. They're the one with the greatest exposure. And so we would still, it would not be ideal if we got our own, but at least we'd have something.
Catherine, we may not have an answer to this, but I have to say, when both of you were talking about this particular issue, what was rattling through my head was maybe the town should go off on its own.
Well, and that's exactly what Cheryl and I've talked about, and we'll be looking at what our options are there with that.
So I'm sort of curious, if we did do that, and we left the school sort of dangling, so to speak, what is the town's exposure through Ashford School? And is that something that our attorney should touch base with us on? What is our exposure? Or Cheryl, maybe you know.
Well, our exposure is still the same. If,
Right.
if there was a breach on their end, we'd be on the hook for $100,000. So I would hope that $100,000 would come out of the Board of Education's budget, which would make the Board of Ed members personally responsible, and then perhaps we'll get some responses to our emails.
And actually, we would be on the hook for the $100,000. But if the claim or claims go over $1 million, we would be on the hook for anything in excess of $1 million as well.
So can I ask a question that I don't know if I'm supposed to be asking this, but who's responsible? In other words, who makes that happen? I'm assuming that's Jim Longo, the superintendent, has to make this happen, or is there another entity at the school? Is it John Lippert? In other words, who has to make these things happen?
In my opinion, it is the chair of the Board of Ed. The superintendent reports to the chair. Therefore, I would think that, yes, it's part of the superintendent's job, but the Board of Ed would be ensuring that he does that.
Can I, again, I'm probably not supposed to be asking this in public, but I'm going to ask anyway. We're a small, intimate group here.
Being recorded.
being recorded. How can we apply pressure to the Board of Education to make this happen? Is there a way that we can do that as a community? Or is this something where we just, I mean, if they just don't do it, what do we do?
I would think that the Board of Finance has a lot of control over the money that the school gets.
Okay, very good. Bill, I saw you raised your hand. Do you have a thought? You're on speaker. You're muted.
Again, just the thought that I had would, for the record and to make clear of our concerns, I think it may be a good opportunity for the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance to write a letter of concern to the Board of Ed about this issue and ask them and put it into their court what they're doing and how they see this being remedied.
Interesting thought there, Bill. So, Catherine.
Bear with me just a second. Just bear with me just a
Yeah.
second. Let's just make sure we're up to date on what has been communicated. Cheryl, what's been communicated to them has been communicated through email, and I think that John Lippert and company were on copy. Was that correct?
That's correct.
So just in general, could you summarize what was communicated? I think it was the fact that we cannot get the insurance without them fixing this.
Right. I don't have the email in front of me, so it's not verbatim, but I explained to them after a month of trying to just get information out of them, we finally got it to the broker who sent it off. And then it came back that we
I told you, this dog does this every time I'm on Zoom.
sorry.
It's a 6-foot squeaky snake.
I thought it was a comment about Cheryl's comments.
No, but he drags this snake all around the house. It's his favorite toy. Go on. Sorry for the interruption.
I explained to them that we were having trouble getting the coverage because the school did not have the multi-factor authentication, and provided them with the additional questions that were being asked, and I asked them when they could have if they had a plan to get the multi-factor authentication in place, and when it would be in place so that we could use that as leverage.
Excuse
So
me.
I agree with Bill that a joint letter or letters from both the selectmen and the Board of Finance to apply a bit more urgency to this would be a good idea.
Thanks,
Could I
Catherine.
ask a question?
Go ahead, Valerie.
You're referring to multi-factor investigation. What is that phrase?
Authentication.
Authentication.
So that's something that the school would have to arrange to have done with their email, is it?
Yes.
Yes. Yep.
It's basically how you access your emails. You'd have to go through multi-factor authentication in order to do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's also used on the finance system and to get into banking and
Right.
many things.
Yep. Yeah. Good. So, Catherine, I'm trying to pawn off something. Would your office be willing to draft a letter that both the selectmen and the Board of Finance would be able to sign off on? And one of the things, again, I'm probably not supposed to say it out loud, but this whole thing is extraordinarily annoying. This has been going on for years. This isn't a new thing. This isn't something that Cheryl's been dealing with for a month or two. This has been going on for years, where we have had public discussion about updating their computer security. It has been addressed in audit reports, etc. The town did what it was supposed to to do that. And the Board of Education has, for whatever reason, either not understood, not felt like they already dealt with whatever the reason is, they haven't done it. And this is annoying. It just needs to be done. And now, it's coming home to roost. So
I would be glad to draft a letter for review and approval by the Board of Selectmen and for your board as well. It's a matter of how quickly do we want that letter to get out?
My suggestion would be the sooner the better. And Chuck, not to correct you, but this is more than annoying. This is a potential serious liability issue
Yes.
hanging over our heads for a long time.
correct. And one of my thoughts on this is, if we are how do I express this? If we are exposed for $100,000, then now is the time to extract the $100,000 as protection against this. So in other words, we can reduce the budget by 100,000 and put it somewhere where we can protect that money if it's needed, if they were to have to utilize it, or we
Chuck.
were going to have to utilize it.
Chuck,
Yeah.
could I, so that $100,000, we have a $100,000 deductible until June 30th. After
Right.
June 30th, we have zero coverage.
Yeah, I see.
So that's why I mentioned the urgency of getting this out right away and having them make sure to get a plan together. And then they have to execute on it.
So it would seem to me that that the town side should probably pursue at least coverage for them, and then hope that the school catches up.
We're looking at that.
Okay,
But
Bill?
but I think that it's not a hope that the school catches up. The school must put those changes in place. It's again, it's
Yeah, we've been saying that for years.
well, think about it this way. The town's risk right now in terms of how we're set up on the town side is remarkably less than the schools.
Correct.
And so even if we didn't have the cyber insurance on the town side, we would still be in a heck of a lot better place than the school is. So if the school gets hit, all of us are going to pay.
Right. Okay. So I'm wondering, Bill, 1 second, and I'll get right to you.
Take your time.
I'm wondering, when cooler heads prevail, mostly mine at the moment, maybe a better strategy would be to write the letter, as you say, just so that there's something formal that all the board members can see, that there's a
Yes.
sense of urgency. But I'm also wondering if maybe there should be a reach out from you, Catherine, to John Lippert to, sort of get a little synopsis of this discussion.
I'll be glad to.
Okay, Bill, I'm sorry.
No problem. And I absolutely have no issue with what you're suggesting, but I was going to suggest perhaps a motion by the Board of Finance that the Board of Selectmen could reference in our letter and,
Yes.
and pass a similar motion at our next selectmen's meeting, along with getting that letter out. In the interim, we can all take a look at a draft of the letter, and you can too, but that a motion of the Board of Finance strongly stating their position on this, that Catherine can reference in the draft letter would be appropriate. And then we can do a like sort of a motion at our next selectmen's meeting.
I agree.
And so this motion would be to urgently.
Express the urgency.
Urgency, exercise. So we're a motion to express urgency to implement
Security measures.
Excuse me?
I'm sorry, Chuck. I was talking aloud. Security measures.
Yep. Cybersecurity measures.
Yep. For the Ashford School.
Measures.
If our policies are expiring, you said the end of June, Cheryl?
Yes.
I'd give them 30 days to do it at the most.
If I could speak as well, I
Sure,
would,
go ahead, Catherine.
yes, there should be a cutoff point to express the urgency. I think, again, my concern is we have an insurance company that's been working with us. They have assessed us. They're saying these things need to be in place in order for them to insure us. They were a good rate. The rates are going to continue to go up. I think we were able to lock in the rate until June 30th. I'm not sure, Cheryl.
It wasn't the same rate that we'd had before. The most current one was 8,500, so it went up some, but that
Okay.
was, not in stone either, because they asked a whole bunch of other questions to help them decide. And I'm sure if they don't have the basic MFA, they don't have.
All right. So the 30 days seems more than reasonable for them to make those changes. I will tell you, it will create some upheaval at the school while they go and do that.
Yep. So what we're going to say is something like, it would be a motion to express the urgency that the BOE implement cybersecurity measures resulting in a new cyber insurance policy within 30 days of receipt of the letter drafted from the selectman's office. Does that? Go ahead, Catherine.
I normally don't speak to your emotions.
I'm looking for help here.
Okay, so it would be, read it one more time, please.
Sure. Express urgency that the Board of Education implement cybersecurity measures resulting in a new cyber insurance policy within 30 days of receipt of.
Okay, so it would really be for them to implement the security measures required in order to secure a cyber insurance policy. And Cheryl, I see you nodding. Is that right?
That sounds good. Yeah, because it's more than just that one thing, and it needs to get done.
And it's in order for us to secure a policy. It's not going to result in a policy. It's that we need to have those things done in order for the insurance company to even consider us.
Since we're talking about, covering the email and everything else, you may want to slip the word comprehensive in there.
That's good too.
Yeah.
Comprehensive. Okay.
Cybersecurity protection policy, something along those lines.
Okay. So it would read something like, express urgency that the Board of Education implement comprehensive cybersecurity measures required.
In order to secure.
Yep. In order to secure a new cybersecurity policy.
And actually, you have to, partway through that, you have to slip in you either have to put a date or within 30 days. Actually, it'll be within 30 days.
Yeah, I was going to say within 30 days.
Of receipt of this letter.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Cheryl, that'll work for you from the end of trying to negotiate. I know we've sat in with the cyber insurance people.
Yeah, we'll continue to look for something, but I'm not hopeful we'll get anything reasonably priced without that. And the policy would be for a year. We want it to start now, so we'd
Yeah.
go through the year. And they have already been notified, so they're getting plenty of time.
All right, so Valerie, I'm going to read this one more time, and then maybe you could read it back because you wouldn't believe what it looks like on my piece of paper.
It's in there. Food.
A motion to express urgency that the Board of Education implement comprehensive cybersecurity measures in order to secure a new cyber insurance policy within 30 days of receipt of this letter.
They need to do the measures within 30 days of receipt of the letter, not get the policy. Okay, you just need to move that part up earlier in the motion. So could you read it one more time? I'll kind of point to where that would go.
Yep. Express urgency that the Board of Education implement comprehensive cybersecurity measures
Within 30 days of the receipt, within 30 days of receipt of this letter.
Yep.
And then continue.
Yep. In order to secure a new cyber insurance policy. So they have to do the measures to get the policy.
Yep.
Okay.
They have to do the measures so we can secure a policy.
Correct. Yep. So, Valerie, do you have a motion in there somewhere?
I would say the board
You need to speak into the speaker.
expresses urgency.
Hey, Valerie,
Yes.
you need to speak into your speaker so I
okay.
can hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. The Board of Finance moves that the Board of Education, no, wait, excuse me. The Board of Finance expresses urgency that the Board of Education move to implement a comprehensive
Cyber
measures,
yeah.
Comprehensive requirements for within 30 days of receiving a letter. The requirements are in order to secure, for the town to secure a cybersecurity insurance policy. And I can clean that up if.
Absolutely. No, you got it.
Cheryl?
Yeah, we can provide it in writing to you, Valerie.
Okay, that would be better, really.
Yep. Okay, and that's what we'll put in our. That's what we'll put in our minutes.
And to Bill's point, his original point, it was to I think you were are you instructing the Board of Selectmen to write a letter, or what are we, who?
Yeah.
Am I just going to go draft it and send it out to you, and you guys can do with it as you will?
I think what we should do, Catherine, is have you guys draft the letter and have your board members sign off on it, and I can sign off on it for our board members, and send it over to the Board of Ed.
Got it.
If that sounds
Perhaps,
reasonable.
perhaps to cover things, Chuck, the motion could indicate that the Board of Finance authorizes the chairman to work with the first selectman to finalize the final draft of that motion in the letter.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Bill. So we'll add that to that motion that somebody's going to write.
Okay. I have a question.
Sure.
Do we have coverage right now?
Yes.
We do.
We have a
That's you.
$100,000 deductible.
Okay. Okay.
So we're hoping to not get hit.
And Bill, just so you know, that coverage was free. And now it's no longer free. So
I
that
was just going to say
policy,
it's not going to remain free, I assume.
no, it's not free. It will not be free. That's why it's going away.
My
Okay.
thought was that if we didn't have coverage or we didn't think we had enough coverage, was there any chance to get a binder coverage, until between now and when our policy expires or due to expire on June 30th? But let's get this letter out first, and we've got a little while to fine tune that.
So
Okay.
Chuck, I
Very
think you're looking for a second on your, you're looking for somebody to.
So I
I
need
motion.
Okay, so Judy's gonna make the motion.
Jesse
Yeah, I
Burnham.
can't repeat all that.
Okay. So Judy's the first, Jesse's the second. And their motion is to express urgency that the Board of Ed implement comprehensive cybersecurity measures within 30 days of receipt of this letter in order to secure a new cyber insurance policy. And this will be a collaborative effort between the first selectman and the chair of the Board of Ed.
Board of Finance.
Board of Finance, my fault. So it'll be roughly, that's what the motion will be. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. Thank you. Catherine, do you have anything else, or you're done with yours?
I'm done with ours.
Okay, thank you. Discussion concerning MBR. I did have Cheryl provide you guys with a sample of what the current year we're in, what MBR looks like. And it's a pretty mumbo jumbo, although if you really look at it and you really spend some time trying to follow it, you sort of can follow it. I was not satisfied. So basically, what I decided to do, based on a recommendation from Cheryl, was I reached out to Kevin Chambers, who's part of the State Board of Education, and his area of expertise is MBR. And so what I wanted to do was get something directly to help us understand. So I can't remember if I had this letter sent out to you either, but I'll just read it real quickly because I want you to understand what we were doing. The Ashford Board of Finance, we have a question about the impact of our regional high school's budget on our town budget. As it happens, we are benefiting from a lower population rate in relation to our tri-town colleagues, resulting in lower expense obligation for our town this year. Per pupil spending would actually increase as both our local school budget and regional budgets will increase. So I'm hoping to get a sense from you as to how to interpret this information. So Kevin got back to me relatively soon, and this was his response. MBR is a K-12 calculation. So we look at the total appropriation / assessment, Ashford's appropriation, and their portion of the region, plus their portion of the region from the current year, and compare it to the previous year's appropriation. If there is an increase, then Ashford has met their MBR. For members of a regional school district, there is also another way to meet their MBR. If the total current year's budget is less than their previous year's budget, then we look strictly at Ashford's appropriation. If their appropriation increases from the previous year, then they have met their MBR. There are provisions for a district to decrease their appropriation from the previous year and still meet their MBR. If there's a decrease in resident students, then there's a deduction of 50% of the district's per pupil expenditures times the resident student decrease. If a district closes a school because of a decrease in students, then there may be a deduction. If a district realizes savings, and this is a sentence I'd like you all to really pay attention to. If a district realizes savings through increased efficiencies, then there may be a deduction for that. That's something to pay attention to for the future. So that was his response to me. After my brain untangled, and it kind of sort of thought I knew the answer was, we're okay from an MBR perspective, I decided to reach out to him again, and this is what I asked him. Thank you for the information that you've passed along. Just as a clarification, I may be struggling with language/definitions. If both the Ashford Schools K-8 appropriation and the Region 19 appropriations increase, yet the town's overall educational budget obligation goes down due to a one-year dip in student population as a percentage of the overall tri-town population at the 19 level, we as a town would meet MBR requirements. I got a very awesome answer. That is correct. That's it. That was the answer. So we are okay with MBR for this year. Go ahead, Catherine. You're on mute.
Actually, the suggestion I wanted to make is that we're picking up extra sound. And so if you look at people's microphones, you can tell where it's coming from. So I would suggest that people put their microphones on mute while you're talking.
Very good.
Very good. But that was great. That was great.
No.
And thank you for sleuthing.
So I wanted some clarity on that. And the reason I wanted clarity, just for obvious reasons, but also both Judy, I believe, and also John Kopek both had asked me some questions about that. And it seemed ridiculous to me that we didn't have clarity. So I thought clarity would be a good thing. So we now have clarity on that.
Could you attach that to your minutes?
I can.
And then frame it in gold.
Sure. Yeah, I'll attach those to the minutes. That would be good. So that was the discussion I had concerning MBR. Does anybody else have any questions? Judy, Jesse, Angie. Okay. Judy?
No, I'm sure we're going to get to it if we're going to readdress our decisions.
Yep.
Last week.
Okay. Yep. Very good. Next agenda item, discussion concerning contingency funding. So actually, I guess this was more specifically a question that both John Kopek and Judy Austin came at in a couple of different ways at me. And I started feeling uncomfortable with the information that I was giving you. I had always been under the impression that we could not have a rainy day fund. Independent of whether it's prudent or not, whether we could do it was the question. And so I decided to reach out to, and I think this was a recommendation from Cheryl, I decided to reach out to our audit team to see if we could get some clarification on that. So I called Sean O'Grady. He dealt with Chris King, and then he got back to me. So what I had asked him was very simply, can we have a rainy day fund? And he's wanted to think on that before he responded. So here was his email. Getting back to you on your question of budget stabilization, you could budget an amount for, and he puts this in quotes, tuition stabilization. He's using an example. We would be probably, calling it something different, like, budget stabilization or something. So anyway, you could budget an amount for tuition stabilization or similar in the general fund, and then that amount could roll into the fund balance as committed fund balance. So in other words, we couldn't steal it for something. We'd have to designate it and say this is monies meant for the following year to help stabilize mill rate. We could label it something like that. Then you could budget to use that committed fund balance to balance the budget of the following year. So that was his one sentence response. And that's actually an answer to the question, can we do it? And the answer is yes. It would be something that we would, if we wanted to do something like that, the actual nuts and bolts of it would be figured out between the audit firm and Cheryl's office. So the reason I wanted to make this an agenda item is I sort of want to clear the air on this, that I made some statements at the last meeting, and I will continue. We are going to get whacked, not this upcoming budget, but the following. And I believe at this point, we are positioned to probably have a slight decrease in our mill rate this year, but we are going to get whacked the following year. And so the question was, do we try to sort of temper what happens in that following year? And again, I don't know how to say this. I'm probably like I think what I'm seeing here, and I think I'm in the majority, there's not an appetite to take advantage of this, to be able to do something like this. And I agree with that we probably should not try to do something like that this year. But I'm not sure that this is the right decision in the long run. I think it's where we're going to go. I think it's probably the right thing to do for now in the immediate budget. I suspect we will regret this in the future. So that's sort of where I land on this. But I wanted you guys to know that we can do it if we want to.
What is your concern, Chuck?
I can't see any way that we're not dealing with almost a 1 to bordering 2 mil increase next year. If you assume even a 2% rate of inflation, the school has come at us with one of their more modest increases in a while. The town, I think, again, this is me speaking. I'm not speaking for the board. This is me speaking. The Board of Ed has come with what I think is a relatively reasonable request. It's one of the lowest ones they've come at us in a while. I think the town is basically balancing out. We've been scrimping on the town side to try to help with the mill rate for too long, and I think the town side is trying to at least catch up a little bit, because we're falling behind on a few things. And I think the town, I like the town budget actually this year. I think it's pretty comprehensive and I think it's sound. So, you know, when you take those two budgets and combine them, that's a mill right there. And what we're benefiting from is Region 19 that's going down about $1.33 million. Not quite. And so we are going to be able to present our town members a budget that's probably, if everything stands the way it is now, roughly 0.2 mil lower than what our mill rate was last year. And, you know, that looks great. It looks like we're all doing the right thing. The problem is next year, we're going to look like a bunch of bums because suddenly we're jacking up all of the budgets. Even if we do just rate of inflation increases, we will be pushing almost 2 mils next year. And I think that's going to be really hard. And so I don't have an answer to, I just think it's incumbent upon us to, whenever you are talking to a community member about budgets, or, you know, when we do our public hearing, I don't think we're going to have a hard time selling this budget. It's the next one, and we got to start letting people know what's going to happen next year. So, you know, so if we could bank $0.5 million, would that make the following year more palatable? I don't know. And I have to say, personally, I think we have to gamble, and I agree with Bill's comments during public, and also Paul during the public comment part, where I just don't think this is the right year to do it. I think it's the right thing to do. I think we should be doing it, but I don't think this is the right year to do it. So I'm conflicted, obviously.
Doing what, Chuck? Moving it up this year for the
Yeah, creating some
expenditures for
sort
the
of,
town and school?
yeah, creating some sort of committed fund balance to help with what we know is going to happen. We know that the mill rate's going to go up severely the next budget cycle. Now, what we don't know is whether, you know, this funding that we're getting with some of the COVID relief, that type of thing, that's where I land that we don't know, and maybe we wait and see. So I think that's the little get out of jail free card this year.
I would wait,
I agree.
because you know, any amount that we could save this year to help the pain next year, we really ought to consider. And since they said that we could do that, I think we should wait and see what we actually have.
Yep. 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 Yeah. I would argue that the public is very has an extraordinarily short memory, and they are not going to remember this year when we start dealing with next year. But nonetheless, Jesse, you have any thoughts?
Sure. I was just going to say, my gut feelings, I'd rather not do any of the saving or putting the money for this and allow the taxpayers to pay less this year and lower the mill rate. But if we were to do anything, I would say, or with this thing that we could do, I would say let's keep the mill rate exactly the same as it was last year. But I wouldn't want to increase it any. But I'm leaning towards towards lowering the mill rate.
Yeah, but sort of what you just suggested, then let's just pretend that, you know, it is about 0.2 mil lower. By that comment, what you're suggesting is there is a potential that you could understand or be comfortable allocating that 0.2, which each tenth is, again, roughly 30,000, basically taking 60,000 and putting it into a committed fund balance, and leaving the mill rate as is, although your real wish is to bring it down.
That's correct.
Okay. Angie, do you have any thoughts?
No, I agree with what's been kind of intended.
Okay,
Yeah, so I agree.
okay.
My concern is with the increases on both the town and the school. The town, I understand, has taken the back for a while. But the school, the increases this year are still going to be there next year. And then there are going to be more increases because you have to go with inflation and everything else. So whatever we decide, it's not going to go away if we keep the budget the way it is. I would like to wait.
Yep. I hear you. It's sort of where I thought we were all going to land. But nonetheless, I wanted us to be cognizant of the ability to do this, and I enjoy that we are able to make a out loud conscious choice to not do it. It allows us a way to reflect later on. So thank you.
Chuck, one more question.
Sure.
How long do we actually have that would be, if we were to change our minds on what we're doing, that would be a considerate amount of time for everybody to reconsider their budgets?
Yeah, so we're at March 18th. Our next meeting is March 25th. And at that meeting, the Board of Finance reviews budget requests requiring additional clarifications, Region 19 budget proposed by the school superintendent, and then we also have something labeled Board of Selectmen recommendations. We may not have. I'm unclear on the Board of Selectmen recommendations. We may be changing that language. I have to speak to Catherine. Catherine.
One of the reasons that we changed the sequence in which the presentations were brought to you, the school brought theirs first before the Board of Selectmen. I've never really, to be quite candid, even as chair of the Board of Finance, I never truly understood the recommendations from the Selectmen's office about things like what the school budget should be. I don't think that that's our place. That's just me personally. I'm not going to speak for any other members of the board. But we did do things in a different sequence this year, and I'm hoping we'll keep that sequence. And to my take, the recommendations from the Board of Selectmen after you have all seen everything doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yep. Okay. So Judy, back to your question. We are, let's see, on April 8th, we are scheduled to approve proposed budgets to be sent to the public hearing. So next week, if we had anybody we wanted to talk to, or if we wanted to review Region 19 budget, I could try to get somebody to come speak to us. I'm not sure that it's a productive activity at this point, unless any one of you has a particular, person that you'd like clarification as to what their budget is about. Again, I'll go back to Paul's opening comments. And again, I apologize for not getting that letter out to you, but you will see it. I'll read a section of it. And so here's what I'm getting at. Public Works and the Volunteer Fire Department each have requested increases of $6,000 and $66.19 respectively. The following departments, which have either reduced services or have been closed, have requested greater than $6,000. Board of Selectmen increase request of $6,986. Recreation Department increase $7,892. The library an increase of 10,000. Youth and Social Services an increase. So are these? So now I'm speaking personally. These are not requests that I have an issue with. What I'm pointing out is somebody from the public has had, a concern about those. And so what I'm suggesting is if any of you have a concern where we need to speak specifically to a department head about their budget, next week would be the time to do that. So that's why I bring that up. Catherine, you had your hand up?
Yes, actually, if someone were to review the video from the meeting where that budget was presented,
Mhm.
I believe you would have found explanations for pretty much all of the increases and some of the decreases. I made a point of doing that, and I know that your secretary went through and had to listen to the 3 hours of it, whatever. But it was done that way for a reason, which was to make sure that the public could hear what the explanations were. So I certainly leave it to your discretion as to how you want to handle it. If you want to have people come in and somehow explain it beyond that, that'd be fine.
Yep.
Your call.
Yeah. So again, I'm now speaking personally. I agree with Catherine. I thought that the presentation of the town's budget was pretty comprehensive. I personally don't have any particular concerns with any specific department. I think they've all been squeezed for a long time. And I think this is a more balanced approach moving forward. That's my personal feeling. So go ahead, Catherine.
And I do have one more comment. I haven't seen the letter, so I look forward to seeing it. But I will tell you that when we talk about services being reduced, the basic services for the town have not been reduced. They have been met. It is the extracurricular stuff has not. And that is some parks, definitely Parks and Recs. Rec has been unable to run some of their programs. So that's definitely an area where we were not able to fulfill all of the things that we had planned to do. We certainly are looking to do that going forward. It's going to start a little later, but we're looking to make sure that we do that. But for all the other things, the basic services that people require, we have been there. We have been working full time behind the doors. We have been responding to all requests, and we've actually picked up on some efficiencies that we're looking at continuing even when the doors are fully open, so to speak. So we've learned a lot, like many other towns, about that improve some aspects of their services. So just to let you know, it's not that people were not providing the services.
I agree. So any of the board members have any specific concerns or anybody they would like clarifications from? Okay, thank you. New business. 6E, fiscal year 1920 annual report update. Jesse, I know I'm just asking you to briefly give us a quick summary of where we're at.
Sure. So as we just within the month finished the annual report update, or not just the update, but the actual report for the 1819, brings us already into now the 1920 to get get all those reports in from the different departments. So we're moving on. I haven't gotten to the point to work with Cheryl yet about contacting anyone that's been delinquent and getting that report in, but
I would be one of them.
so we'll make sure we get one in for the Board of Finance and all the other departments as well. So Cheryl, just a heads up, I'll be contacting you shortly to see where we stand.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jesse. The next agenda item is update on the Finance Office Committee. John Kopek is the chair of that particular committee. He's not available today, so we will get an update at a later time from him. I don't think there's much to report on that front, but again, I'm just want to keep it out there that it's something that we may want to deal with.
I don't know if this is a good time to mention that the Board of Education's business manager has resigned.
Yeah, good point. I am assuming, and maybe that's incorrect. I'm assuming everybody at this meeting is aware that the business manager from the school has resigned. So again,
No,
this
it's not.
who was that didn't know?
Judy.
Judy. Yep. Yeah. No,
I didn't
that's
know. I didn't
and
know.
Angie and Bill.
So who's going to do the job?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
They're
Wow.
supposedly promoting somebody that was working under Martha on a temporary basis. That was the last that I heard. It is not a great solution. It's a stopgap measure. I also, if I remember correctly, and Cheryl, maybe you know more at this point, but I believe that they're bringing Karen back again to just help for a little while.
She's only available for the next 3 Fridays, and then she is truly retiring and getting in her motorhome with her husband and leaving the state.
Good for her.
Yes. Yes, this is the 3rd attempt.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a real concern. I'm very, very concerned about the business office up there. This is not, this is not good. And I did go to the special meeting that the Board of Ed had about this issue, and basically it became readily apparent that what they would like to do, and I think rightly so, is they'd like to get their new superintendent in place, and that superintendent should be very involved in the choice of a business manager, because they work very, very closely together. That's my understanding. Cheryl?
Is your understanding that they are going to wait until July 1st to get a superintendent and then advertise for a business manager? Is that the thinking?
Yeah, it is. I totally hear what you're asking, and I don't have an answer. It's not good.
I wasn't at the meeting, so I was just asking if that was how you interpret.
I would think,
Yeah, I don't know.
if I may,
Go ahead, Catherine.
I would think that would destabilize them. They'd have a new superintendent. They'd wait until first of all, they're talking about this other person who works in the finance department taking over the role of the finance director and somehow backfilling with other people in the office on other support that person would have been doing normally. And in fact, then waiting until they get a new superintendent in place who won't know very much, will be new to the superintendent role no matter what, certainly within that school. And I can't imagine that they would be waiting to get somebody in place for their finance director.
I hear you, Catherine. I get it. Bill, you had a comment.
Well, this whole thing sounds like a recipe for disaster to me, but I'm wondering if it would be appropriate. You said you have a meeting coming up on the 25th. to invite a contingency from the Board of Ed, perhaps their chairman, and I don't know who else they'd want there, but just to discuss this. There needs to be some interim arrangements, a little more than the next 3 Fridays, on what the overall plan is. And I know in past we've gone to sister towns and sort of borrowed fiscal assistance from them, from their directors or whatever. I think Mansfield helped us out a couple of times like that. But I would really hate to think we're going to wait till June or July before figuring out exactly what track they're going to be taking up there. I mean, there's a great deal of potential problems sitting there.
I agree. I also think CABE can, I think that's the right word, can also supply a temporary to buy some time. But again, I'm unclear as to the power that we, and I mean everybody that seems to be at this meeting, collectively have. I mean, I've had an issue with the business manager up there for years. And it basically it's, well, that's nice.
And me before you.
Right.
And this
So,
got
you know,
right into another audit.
correct.
Exactly. I mean,
Yep.
there's all sorts of, as you think more about this, and I didn't realize that the director had left up there. I mean, there's all sorts of potential issues being raised. But while we may not have, when I say we, I mean the Board of Selectmen or the Board of Finance have power over who they hire or what their timing is, I think at minimum we should offer our assistance in a friendly manner, that we want to assist any way we can. Because believe me, if it hits the fan up there, it's going to hit the fan with us real quick.
That's right. I agree with you absolutely. At that special meeting, you know, it was expressed with a fair amount of confidence that they felt they could weather this. So, you know, maybe they can allay our fears. I don't know.
The other concern is if they're coming in July, they only have whoever comes in is going to be under tremendous burden for the end of the year to get stuff together if
Yep.
nobody's keeping up.
And it starts before the end of the year. You prepare all of June and some of May, you're preparing for the audit, you're preparing for the end of the year. There's a tremendous amount of work involved, and
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, Cheryl, you know what? You just triggered a thought. And, you know, one of the things that I know that the Board of Ed did is they engaged with their own accounting firm at one point to help them when we were having all the audit problems with them. In fact, it was a forensic auditing firm. What I'm wondering is, I'm wondering if they can engage with an actual auditing firm to help them get through this thing and get their audit, which is, as you just suggested, that this is coming soon. They need to have their numbers in the right place.
They're the Board of Education. This is their job. They need to get this right, finally, please. Really.
Right.
I'm sorry, I'm speaking out of turn, but this just goes on and on.
Right.
And
I get it.
They don't understand the import of their business office. It is central to everything. With Martha there, they realized they weren't keeping track of computers properly. She's got that on track. There are so many facets to what that office does, and it is not given the proper recognition. So I hope that this time they will, and they will do it sooner rather than later.
Yep, I agree. Bill?
Does this scenario present a situation where the superintendent may reconsider his retirement for now?
And
I
no.
am not going to respond. I don't know how to respond to
Thank
that.
you. I don't think I expected a response, but I had to say it.
Catherine, you had a thought?
Not when she wants on
You don't want to
tape.
hear my thought. Thank you.
All right, so we're all on the same silent page. Cheryl, thank you for bringing up that I had meant to talk about the business office up at the school, and I had forgotten to make a note of that. So thanks for bringing it up. Next agenda item is the second opportunity for public comments, and I think Paul's still here.
I'm trying. Yeah, I got nothing. It was an interesting conversation about MBR and good to hear. So,
Okay.
I will say something Jesse mentioned. I, believe it or not, would not be opposed to leaving the mill rate flat and taking that extra 0.2 and earmarking it for next year. I know it seems counterproductive to what I preach all the time, but putting some money aside, finding out that we can do that is not such a bad thing, as long as it's done properly. This is a bad year, but next year could be just as bad. We don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
You know, and I can't speak for how anybody else does it, but you know, normally most people I would hope would at least look ahead and say, we know, you know, it's your taxes are XYZ amount. It's a bonus if we can bring them down, absolutely. But at the same time, most people, I think, my property tax anyway is taken out obviously with an escrow. But you know, and I have a business, so I have to predict that anyway, because I have to put that aside as I go forward or look ahead. So putting that money aside, it wouldn't actually be, it's not a whole lot, but it's better than nothing to have it there, you know, because the 0.2 of a mil next year couldn't be the difference between making that 1.5 or 2 mil be a little bit less. So, which
Yep.
I think is important.
Yep. Thank you very much for your comments, Paul. It's interesting. I do think I again, I am still torn on the right thing to do. The prudent the empathetical side of me would like to keep the mill rate low. The knowing what's coming down the road and the practical planning side of me feels that we should give this a little whirl and create a fund, a secure fund, which I've lost the name of, that can only be utilized to help with the mill rate in the future. But you know, that's a decision that I think at least the 4 members that are here tonight, I was hoping for a few more here because I think this is an important discussion. You know, that would be, I'm assuming that would be something, Cheryl, maybe you can help with this. I'm assuming that would be something that would be in the selectmen's budget. We would have a contingency fund.
It would probably go under the Board of Finances as a
Right.
contingency with its own name, but I would have to talk to the auditors about whether we would leave it there and consider it just designated, or if we would move it to actually a whole separate fund like we do the Board of Ed non-lapsing fund.
Yep.
Right.
So I would get their opinion on that.
Okay.
And
it would-
another thing that you can't really predict is what the values of properties will be, because I think we're in reval. And also I know that in talking with the assessor, Kara said that the values of campers and motorhomes and vans has gone way up. So, you know, there are many things that you
And
can't affect.
trucks. And
Yeah,
trucks.
yeah, so that's, sorry, Paul.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it's a lose-lose for me. Huh?
So when I say mill rate, obviously mill rate is a very complex number made up of a whole bunch of factors. So what I guess what I really meant by the comments about mill rate and so forth is what people are going to be taxed will go up. So just as a quick example, I think it's the town of Kent. It's about the same size as us. Their budget's very similar. Their mill rate is literally half of ours. It's at like 17 mills, but their properties are more than double our value. So those individual households are still paying the same amount that our households are paying. It's just the value of their homes is more. So mill rate is just one part of what people see going out of their checkbook. You know,
Mhm.
that's
Chuck?
what I mean.
Chuck,
Yes.
this is Angie.
Yeah.
So just in, in terms of what we're talking about, if we were to go to have 0.2 less on the mill rate, if we were to do that and not put away to a rainy day fund, what would that mean for like, a $300,000 home? 0.2. What, are they $50 less? Are they $300 less? Are they, I don't know what the difference is.
Angie, that's a good question that I can't answer off the top of my head. I haven't translated in my head what a tenth of a mill rate,
Right,
how that reacts to a home worth a couple $100,000.
right. And I think that would be important. Like if it were like, $800 difference, wow, the person would say, I'm paying $800 less than last year because they see it.
Right.
But if it's $50, they wouldn't even notice. Just saying.
Yeah, I can run that. I can figure that out, Angie. It's a good question. I'll try to have some sort of answer at our next meeting for that.
Okay,
Particularly if you remind me.
I will.
Right.
Did the state pass the 1 mil tax on properties over, was it $300,000? Do we know if that passed?
I
Bill,
think it's
you're
400,000. Bill, you might know. I think it's 400,000, and I don't know yet. Bill?
The last I looked, it was 300,000 so-called mansion tax, which we all know a $300,000 home is far from being a mansion. But the last
Exactly.
I knew, they were looking at 1%,
Okay,
but,
so we don't.
but nothing had been decided yet.
I thought I read in the Current today that it was 400,000, but I could be wrong.
It's probably a moving target. I did not read the Current today, so you could be
Okay.
right, Chuck.
Yep. So I think, Cheryl, the answer to that is nobody knows. Any other public comments? Agenda items for the March 25th meeting. My guess is that we will have a meeting. I will figure that out. I will talk to the selectman's office. And we have it on our budget calendar, but I'm not sure. I may reach out to Region 19 and see if I can get somebody to just speak to us about their budget, but I'm not sure that it's going to change anything. I may not waste anybody's time on that. Catherine?
Also, if I hear anything more about how these relief funds can be used and when we'll get them and that kind of thing, I'll notify you. I'll send you something to let you know so you can let your board members know.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. And you know what? I may run the March 25th one because I like the idea of having Board of Ed representatives communicate to us what's going on. I have a feeling hopefully by then we will have a letter out to them as we discussed earlier. And I think our board and the group that's been here today does have some questions about and concerns about the business office. I think it wouldn't hurt to have that discussed at our next meeting. So I'll reach out to John Lippert, and I now that I think about it, we will most definitely have that meeting.
Okay.
Okay. Remarks for the good of the board. I will just say, as I always do, I am very impressed and very pleased with all the folks that attend this meeting today. You're all just, I really mean this. You're pretty spectacular people for doing this. So thank you. I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Jesse Burnham, second.
Jesse. All right. Second, first.
Hey, Chuck,
Yes, go ahead, Bill.
if I can mention quick, I think Butch is doing much better. I
Okay,
know
good.
he got his second COVID shot today. He drove himself and everything else. He refused to ride.
Good.
So he seems to be doing a lot better. And I have not heard directly, but I've heard indirectly that Carl seems to be doing a bit better.
Okay, good. Yeah, the last news I had on Carl was fragile, so
Yeah.
that's good to hear.
That's it. I meant to mention that earlier. Sorry.
Thank you. So we have a motion to adjourn. Judy was the first. Jesse was the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Aye. All right, motion passes. Thank you,
Good night,
everyone.
people.
Night, folks. Stay
Everybody.
safe.
Thank you, Chuck, for what you do.
Yes.
All right, thanks,
Not
guys.
easy.
Same here.
All right,
Here, here. Night, people.
bye-bye.
Bye.